Hello and welcome to our discussion today. We want to take a look at some contemporary issues in leadership and would look at an introduction, of course, then the digital transformation of leadership. Then we'll look at diversity, equity, and inclusion. We'll discuss ethical leadership in the global era. And then we'll look at remote versus hybrid work challenges. Then we'll look at sustainability and ESG leadership, crisis and adaptive leadership, the generational shifts and expectations, and then we'll conclude. So basically, these are the various topics we'll be touching on before we conclude the discussion today. So, in recent times, you realize that leadership has taken on a different turn, right? If you compare leadership in recent times to what existed several centuries ago, you will notice that there's been a very big change, right? And now things are happening in a much more different way than it used to be some time ago. So, leadership in today's world extends beyond traditional management. We've already established the fact that leadership and management, even though they are related, are not necessarily the same. Whereas management involves the organization of resources and the use of resources to achieve the organization's objectives, you realize that leadership involves motivating and inspiring people to get the work done, right? And so leadership in today's world moves beyond the traditional management that we all know. And in recent times, leaders tend to face some um, changes, right? And these changes are not such that when something happens today, it takes a long time before another thing happens. The changes that are are facing leaders now, or the changes that leaders face now, are such that they happen in a rapid manner. So, if you pick technological change, for example, you realize that the upgrades and the advancements in technology are such that they are very rapid. Okay, so modern leaders face rapid technological, social, and economic change. So you can go to bed one night, and then by the time you wake up, you realize that there have been changes in the economic environment. There have been changes in the social environment. There have been changes in the technological environment. So, as a leader, what do you do in the face of all of these rapid changes that happen? Okay. So for a leader to succeed, you realize that it is mostly dependent on how agile the leader is, how the leader is able to adapt to the changing situations in the environment. Otherwise, the leader will not be as effective as he has to be. So, leadership success depends on agility, it depends on emotional intelligence, and it also depends on inclusivity, knowing that the environment within which the leader works is not fixed, it keeps changing. Okay, so in recent times, there's a shift in focus from authority to influence. So rather than walking about like the boss, you now carry yourself as a leader who influences and inspires rather than giving orders all over the place. And then it also focuses on collaboration as well as adaptability. So, in recent times, the concept of leadership is not like it used to be, it's not like what we knew. So, leadership involves um, more of influence, motivation, collaboration, as well as adaptability, right? So, when we pick technology, you notice that technology has affected leadership in several ways, right? Previously, prior to working remotely, you realize that for a leader to meet with the followers or for the leader to interact with the followers, it necessarily had to be a face-to-face encounter. Records were such that you keep records manually. Okay, when you have to retrieve information, it has to be done manually. But in recent times, there are several tools. Technology has come up with a lot of advancements, and they have brought about tools that are used to ensure that work is done in an easy manner or in an easier way rather than the manual that people were used to some time ago. And it is important that with all the technological advancements around us, it's important that leaders leverage on the digital tools that are available. Okay, so if there's an opportunity for a leader to have a virtual meeting with team members, it's important that the leader makes use of the technology available rather than if the followers, for example, have to fly over from another country, they go through all the hassle, pay the price, okay, all the expenses that will go into traveling from one country to the other just for a meeting or for a conference. Okay, so leaders need to leverage on digital tools. Okay, so that now we have artificial intelligence, you have big data, you have cloud spaces where you can store documents and have access to them as and when you have connection. Okay, I mean internet connection. All right, so it's important that leaders leverage on these digital tools. And to be able to leverage on the digital tools, it means that the leaders themselves need to be literate digitally. They need to know what is happening in the digital space, right? And so, what it means is that to be an effective leader, one of the major competencies that an individual will require to be an effective leader is the digital literacy. You cannot do without it in recent times. So, as a leader, to be able to succeed, you necessarily need to be literate digitally, know what is happening, know the technologies available, get to know the tools that are available and can help you perform your tasks effectively. Okay, so digital literacy is a core leadership competency. All right. It's also important to know that once you get to use technology and have access to the internet and share information on the cloud, what it also means is that you have exposed not just you, but your followers as well as the organization within which you work. You have exposed everybody to possible attacks. Okay. So, what this means is that as a leader, you also have to be aware of the risks that are involved when you get online. Okay, so once you start engaging your followers online, once you start leaving some digital footprints, it's important that you are aware of cybersecurity issues. Okay, and you also have to be aware of digital ethics so that you don't get yourself or your organization in trouble. Okay, so basically, these are some of the things that the leader should take note of when it comes to the digital transformation. Then you have issues related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So if you hear DEI, what it stands for is the diversity, equity, and then inclusion. It is important. Okay, we spoke about diversity earlier on in one of our discussions. It is important that as a leader, you know that the people who work with you in a team are not the same. There are differences. They have differences among them. The way they behave, the way they think about issues, their output levels will not be the same. So, as a leader, it is important that you identify all the differences among the followers you are working with, and you also should be able to leverage on these differences. Okay, so effective leaders must foster inclusive and equitable workplaces so that no matter how different the followers are, each member of the team will feel that they are being treated well, and that there's no discrimination, there's no form of discrimination among the team members. So, effective leaders must foster inclusive and equitable workplaces. All right. It's also important to note that as you have different people within the team, it's likely to affect the innovation levels. All right. As people are having different levels of mental maturity and all of those, it's important to note that um, that diversity, equity, and inclusion will affect the rate at which the team is able to innovate. So if you have a team and the members feel that they are all treated equally, they feel that they are respected despite the differences that they come with, you will notice that their followers or their team members will tend to be open to innovation. But if they realize that no, there is some kind of discrimination among us, or we are not being treated fairly, or we are not being treated with some kind of inclusion and every team member valued, you realize that it will affect innovation negatively. Employee retention is also directly linked to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Sometimes employees tend to leave an organization not because the organization is not good, not because that employee is not competent, but just because they feel that they are not accepted within the group. Okay, so you'll notice that the issue of DEI is related to employee retention as well as the branding of the organization or the ethical branding of the organization. So we spoke about cultural intelligence also. It is important that the leader becomes culturally intelligent. Get to know the people you are working with, get to know their norms, get to know what they believe in, get to know what works with them, so that you would adapt to the culture of your followers without necessarily shelving your own beliefs. Okay, so the leader needs to be culturally intelligent and also be aware of bias. If you are aware of bias, then you will try to prevent it from manifesting in all of its forms. Okay. Then you have the issue of ethical leadership in a global era. You realize that in recent times there's a heightened public scrutiny. And the least thing that happens, people start probing, and people expect so much transparency from corporate organizations, right? And people want to hold leaders accountable for what they have to do and what they say they would do. So, because of the heightened public scrutiny and the fact that there's so much exposure from the media, it's important that as a leader, you ensure ethical integrity so that at every point in time, you will be able to go through every kind of scrutiny that you are taking through without any form of accusation of wrongdoing. Okay, so the leader has to know that in recent times, People are looking out for accountability. The public is looking out for transparency. The press or the media is also looking out for accountability, transparency, and holding people by their word. So, as a leader, it is important that you are mindful of ethics, of the issue of ethics. Ethics basically refer to something being right or wrong. So, as a leader, if you work in an organization, get to know the some call it the code of ethics, get to know the rights and the wrongs in the organization, get to know what the industry within which you work consider as right or wrong, and then that will guide your actions as a leader. Okay. And like we have discussed earlier, recent organizations or organizations now are not limited to a particular country. All right. You have organizations scattered all over, all right, all over the world. All right. So you can have branches around the the world. And so it is important that you know what pertains to each country where a branch of your organization is, so that you don't limit yourself to just the ethical requirements of where you find yourself. It's important to also get to know the ethical requirements in other jurisdictions where maybe a branch of your business is located. Okay, so global leadership requires navigating different cultural norms ethically. Then there's also what you call the whistleblowing. All right, whistleblowing basically is having people talk about the wrongdoings in the organization and reporting to the appropriate authorities. So, if, for example, someone blows the whistle, it is important that they are protected. And that is what ethical leadership does. If someone takes the risk and blows the whistle, ethical leadership requires that that whistleblower is protected. Okay, so it's important to know what to do to protect whistleblowers, to ensure fairness, and also to ensure that there is transparency. Okay, so the issue of ethics is actually a big thing now in leadership. Then there is the concept of remote work, all right, where you have people working from wherever they feel is comfortable. You have people working from home. They don't necessarily have to visit the office space to get the work done. All right. And then some people also do a blend of remote work and then working on site. So the blend of remote work and working on site is what you refer to as the hybrid work. Okay. And whether people work remotely or they combine working remotely with working on site, it comes with challenges. Okay. There are several challenges related to remote and hybrid work. All right. And even though without COVID, I believe that we would still have got here. COVID actually accelerated the speed. And so getting to this level has moved really, really fast. And so now the concept of virtual leadership is such that you cannot run away from it. So leaders sometimes have followers who they do not see physically. And that leader, just like he would motivate a follower he's seeing in person, the leader has to be able to motivate virtual team members the same way he would do in person. Okay. In the same vein, there are new expectations for work-life balance because sometimes working virtually can be overwhelming. From afar, it looks like it's easier than working on site. But research has found that people who work remotely or people who work virtually sometimes do not have the work-life balance because, for example, you would be at home and instead of having family time or having quality time with family, you may have to be attending to emails or responding to phone calls or having an online meeting. And sometimes it happens at odd hours because you may even have participants in the meeting from different regions. And you'll notice that for most of those regions, the time difference is an issue. So, as a leader, you should know a time or you should be able to arrange a time that will be suitable for every team member, no matter where he or she finds himself. And sometimes it comes with some challenges. Okay, so as a leader, you should be able to know all of these dynamics and be flexible so that you would succeed. Otherwise, remote and hybrid work can be very challenging. All right. So leaders should be able to manage dispersed teams, virtual teams, all right, very well. They should be able to manage them well and engage them in a way that will not get the team members overwhelmed. It's important to keep communication transparent and free, okay, so that team members can reach the leader at any time. Can you imagine a virtual team working with a leader who is always out of coverage area or always cannot be reached on phone? It will be difficult to produce the results that are required, or even difficult to communicate the progress that has been made. Okay, so the leader has to ensure that he's available to the team members. He should be able to engage with the team members despite the fact that the engagement is online. Then you have the issue of sustainability and ESG leadership. If you hear ESG, it's an acronym that stands for environmental, social, and governance principles. So, in recent times, all activities and several talks are geared towards sustainability, okay, because the rate at which things are going, if we don't stress on sustainability, the possibility that you have a human being living on Earth after some years will be very low. And so there's a lot of focus on sustainability, on environmental issues, on social issues, and other governance principles. And so, for a leader in recent times or modern leader, it's important that you that leader is able to um, also focus on these environmental issues such that in leading the team towards the accomplishments of the various projects that they have to complete, your focus as a leader should be on sustainability. How best can you preserve the environment even if the work is being done? All right. Or how best can you do the work such that the harm that will be um the harm to the environment will not be so much, or the negative effect of whatever project you are involved in will not be so much. Okay, so the leader has to ensure that he's able to integrate sustainability into the business strategy so that no matter what the task is to be performed, sustainability should be at the core. All right. So, whatever is being discussed or whatever work is being done, the issue of sustainability should be at the core. Okay. Then there's the concept of crisis in leadership. So as a leader um leads, or as people try to lead teams and organizations, there are times that crises come up. Okay, crises are most of the times not planned for, and they come up suddenly, or they spring up suddenly. So in a case where the leader is faced with crisis, it's important that that leader i- is a leader that has resilience, all right, and that leader is able to withstand shocks and would also be able to be responsive during the crisis, because the crisis, no matter how challenging, right, is the responsibility of the leader to motivate the followers even during the crisis. So the leader himself has to be resilient and responsive. Otherwise, the effect of the crisis on the followers will be so bad that it will be difficult to get out of the crisis. But if the leader is able to manage the situation well and communicate some kind of assurance to the team members, you realize that they would also be able to go through the crisis that has come up in a much better way. All right. So during crisis, it is important that leaders try to communicate more and assure the members that things are going to be all right. And during those uncertainties, it's important that the leader tries to empower the followers. They should get to know that even in the crisis, they can get the work done, or even in the crisis, they can succeed, or they can meet whatever targets they have put ahead of them. Okay. Adaptive leadership focuses on navigating uncertainty, empowering other people, and also learning. Okay, so it's important to note here that the leader during crisis would have to also subject him or herself to learning, to continuous learning. We looked at continuous learning as a trait of all leaders. It's important to keep on learning even in the middle of crisis, so that it will be um it will be easier to cope with whatever change is coming up as a result of the crisis. Then you have generational shifts. Okay, some time ago, the way our parents were working is not how we are working now. So you have millennials and Gen Zs who would not want to do 8 to 5. They would rather want to work when there's work to be done. If there's no work to be done, a Gen Z or a millennial will not want to be in the office. Okay, so now they want to be part of the gig economy, work when they want to, or work when there's work to be done. And if there's no work, they'd rather do something else than leisure about in the office. So the millennials and Gen Zs demand purpose, they demand some flexibility. Okay. The Gen Zs would want to work from home. They will talk about the virtual work or remote work. Okay. Or a blend of the two. But a Gen Z or a millennial would not really want to stay around in the office all the time. Okay. So it's important that as a leader, you get to know the the different kinds of generations that you are working with. So if you have a team and the team consists of very old people and you also have young people on the team, it's important that as the leader, you are able to um adapt, okay, try to be here and there, support the needs of the older people on the team, and also try to support the needs of the younger workers on the team. Okay. So that in essence, what you are doing is trying to meet everybody um at their points of need. Okay. So in essence, the younger generation will be mentored by the older generations to see the need, okay, of maybe doing things a particular way. And then on the reverse, you can also have the older team members being mentored by the younger generation, so that the older people get to also know the use of some technologies that will make their work much easier. And the leader should be able to facilitate all of this. Okay, so the mentoring and reverse mentoring are very vital strategies that the leader should be able to encourage among his or her team members. So, based on all that we have discussed, it is important to note that there are some key competencies for contemporary leaders. And you talk about emotional intelligence. I think we'll be looking at emotional intelligence in our next discussion. Okay. So, emotional intelligence is a key competence that contemporary leaders should have. They should know what is happening with technology, right? Know the new tools that are available and the new systems that will make work easier. They should also know what is happening in other domains. The leader has to be culturally competent or culturally aware. All right. Then the leader should also be able to um the leader should also be able to participate in ethical decision making, right? Focus on the issue of ethics, right? And then there should also be strategic agility. Strategic agility. Okay, the leader should be able to change when there's the need to change. It's not like, okay, we have set a target, and so no matter what happens, whether hook or crook, we have to achieve this target. No, that shouldn't be the case. The leader has to be able to be dynamic, right? And agile and adapt when there's the need to, and make necessary changes when possible or when necessary to whatever strategy that the organization has put in place. And the leader should also be able to communicate effectively, right, to the followers. So these are some key competencies that contemporary leaders should have. All right. So to conclude, we say that in recent times, leadership is taking on some more effects. Okay, it's taking on um some more changes are affecting the way leaders behave, right? And contemporary leadership requires constant learning, okay? Because things are changing and they are changing at a very fast rate. The leader should also be able to learn and adapt to the new changes that are coming up. And the leader should be able to integrate technology, ethics, and then also be able to ensure that there's no form of discrimination among team members. And then the leader himself has to be resilient. Why? Because crisis comes up and no one really prepares for that. And so the leader has to be resilient so that in times of crisis, he's still able to keep the team members together. And then in modern times, success success for the leader lies in influence and not authority. So the leader's ability to influence people is very important. The leader, to be able to succeed, has to be agile, right? And he has to be able to get everyone on board. uh, And then he has to be a visionary person as well as an ethical person. So the future belongs to leaders who are agile, who are inclusive, ethical, and then visionary. So these are our discussion questions, right? The first one is, which contemporary issue poses the greatest challenge to leaders, okay, in our context. Then the second one is, how can leaders balance ethical considerations with profitability? And then the last one, we want to find out how remote work has reshaped leadership expectations in your experience. So we'll discuss these in class into detail. I believe that by the time we are done with these discussions, we would have been able to explain further. Thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you shortly.